The Guiding Light, presented by Does, the soap that does everything in your washing machine, and Ivory Soap, the most famous soap in the world.
Looking from left to right, Harriet and Gwendolyn. Don't you think Harriet has an outstanding complexion? Well, Ivory is her beauty soap. Now, don't be hurt, Gwendolyn. You can have that ivory look yourself. Why, pure, mild ivory offers every girl a lovelier complexion. Just a simple change to regular care and gentle ivory. That'll turn the trick. Yes, it pays to use the complexion soap more doctors advise than any other. Why, in only 7 days, Ivory Care will bring a girl a prettier, younger-looking skin. In 7 days, your complexion can have a clearer, fresher, finer textured look. That ivory look. You'll like it. Won't you make Ivory your beauty soap?
And now, The Guiding Light, created by Erna Phillips.
Why, Richard, I thought you'd already left for the office. Why, it's going on 10.
I know what time it is. Laura, I've been very disturbed.
You've been disturbed. What do you think I've been? Do you realize we haven't seen Dick?
Yes, I know.
Grand jury hearing. Have you seen this morning's paper?
Yes, it's the same story the news wrote up when Kathy was questioned at headquarters. Doesn't say anything.
Repetition, Richard, makes a deep impression.
Laura, I've been wanting to talk to you ever since I saw Dick at the hospital, when he asked me for a loan of $25,000.
I suppose you feel guilty because you didn't give him the money so that his wife could be released on bond.
Well, don't you?
Certainly not.
Well, I feel guilty for a number of reasons.
Well, there's no doubt that he's your son with his overwhelming sense of duty.
Duty is hardly the word. What I'm talking about is a matter of decency.
Decency? How can you use that word in the same breath with Kathy, a girl who killed a man?
You don't know that any more than I do.
Well, the grand jury will decide that after they've heard the facts.
Until they make their decision, neither you nor I have any right to condemn Kathy.
You don't think so? Well, I do. All right. Suppose for the moment that we assume that Kathy had nothing to do with her first husband's death. Do you think that there was any decency in her lying? Do you excuse the fact that Kathy married our son without having told him that she was married before? As I told Kathy and Dick, how do we know whose child she's going to bear? Bob Lang's or Dick's?
When did you see Kathy?
Well, I had a long talk with her a week or so ago.
No wonder we haven't heard from Dick.
She's a very shrewd young woman. I explained fully our reactions to all that's happened.
You had no right to talk for me, Laura.
Kathy is more than willing to give Dick a divorce. She's already told him that. I can't think of anything that could have been more effective as far as our son is concerned. That's all she had to say to bring out the so-called chivalry of a young man who thinks he's an idealist and feels he has to live up to the role.
Is that what you think of our son? Laura, I want to tell you something. I'm proud of Dick. He's doing no more than I'd do for you under similar circumstances. But I'm very much ashamed of myself as a parent. We have a fine son with a real sense of values. Values that you and I don't seem to have been able to live up to. And I think you should know that from here on out, I intend to do everything I can for Dick and his wife, and our grandchild.
Well, Richard, Perhaps you'll change your tune after the grand jury hears this case. In fact, I'm sure you will.
We'll learn more about this in a moment. You know, this product gets your clothes clean. So does this one. But does more than get your clothes clean. Does scrubs out the toughest dirt. But in addition to that, Does leaves your clothes softer and smoother. And Does is so kind to your hands. No detergent can do a wash like Does. It's the soap in Does that does it. Finer, richer soap than in any other leading wash day product. Now, here's a t-shirt we washed in Does. And believe me, it's clean. Smells clean, too. And something else. Does has left this fabric softer to touch. Doesn't feel stiff, but soft and smooth. And Does leaves your hands smooth, too. Honestly, no detergent can do a wash like Does. It's the soap in Does that does it. And now, back to the guiding light.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I am Richard Hanley, district attorney appointed by Judge Harris. You should know that I have been especially charged with the responsibility of appearing before this grand jury to inform you of facts through witnesses or documentary evidence of crimes that we believe to have been committed. The first case on the docket is the case of the state of California versus Kathy Lang Grant. Now, we have certain information to the effect that on the night of September 12th, 1952, Mrs. Grant committed the crime known as murder. Now, we have documentary evidence, and witnesses will testify as to what they know, what they saw, and what they heard from Kathy Lang Grant herself. Miss Alice Graham, our first witness, is ready to tell you what she knows about this crime. Now, Miss Graham, will you tell the jury in your own words, please, exactly what you know happened on the night of September the 12th?
Well, I suppose I should say first that Kathy had been sharing an apartment with me for some months. We'd become very good friends. But Kathy isn't the kind of person who talks very much about herself. I did know that she had a friend, a medical student who lived in San Francisco, with whom she'd been, well, they had had some sort of a falling out.
Now, Miss Graham, we are particularly interested in the night of September the 12th, the night that Robert Lang met his death. You knew the deceased?
Oh, yes. Kathy, well, she'd been going out with him pretty regularly. She had confided in me that, well, that Bob was pretty crazy about her, but she didn't care too much about him. Personally, I think the main reason she went out with him as much as she did was because she'd had a misunderstanding with Dick Grant.
Go on, Miss Grant.
Well, I think that it was around Labor Day. Kathy went away for a few days. And when she came back, she told me she'd married Bob, but that she didn't want anyone to know about it. She swore me to secrecy, and, well, she was a pretty unhappy girl.
Unhappy?
But what I mean is, the day after she married Bob, she came back to the apartment. And, well, she told me she was sorry she'd married him, that she'd made a big mistake, but she didn't know what to do about it.
Yes?
Well, she didn't see too much of her husband. She avoided him as much as possible. Of course, Bob was terribly in love with her.
If I may ask, Miss Graham, did Mrs. Grant, then Mrs. Lang, entertain any idea of a divorce or an annulment?
Oh, yes. Yes, she did.
I see. Very well. Will you go on, please?
Well, anyway, on the evening of September 12th, I knew that Kathy was going to have dinner with Bob. She told me he'd pick her up at the store where she was working and that she'd be home early. Well, at that time, I had a television program here in Los Angeles, and I did my program, and I came back to the apartment. It must have been, around 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock. Not 12.
No, it was around 11. Kathy seemed very upset.
Now, if I may interrupt, did she speak of her husband at all?
Well, no, she didn't. As I said, she was very upset. Well, having been her roommate for many months, I knew her moods pretty well, and I knew that this was no time to question her. But she did seem very depressed. I told her I had a sort of date with a friend of mine, George Stevens, and, well, since she seemed so depressed, I asked if she'd like to come along with us. Well, she surprised me. I mean, Kathy didn't usually accept that sort of an invitation, but she said she'd like nothing better. So we met Mr. Stevens.
You met Mr. Stevens about what time?
Maybe around 11:30.
I see. Now, just for the record, Miss Graham, did you know or did Kathy tell you what time she arrived at her apartment?
Why, no. But it couldn't have been long before I got home. I mean, her coat was on the sofa, and, well, she's a very orderly girl. She always hung her things up when she came in, and, well, I just assumed that she must have come in shortly before I did.
Yes. But she definitely was with you and Mr. Stevens at 11:30 on the night of September the 12th.
Yes. She was with us.
Thank you, Miss Graham. Ladies and gentlemen, the next witness I will call will be Mr. George Stevens.
You will love Gentle Ivory soap in this handy personal size, the toilet soap size. You know, you get 4 cakes of personal size ivory for the same price as 3 cakes of other leading toilet soaps. Like getting 1 cake free. And handy, look, fits perfectly in your soap dish and in your hand. Ideal for your complexion care. Change to regular cleansing and this personal size of pure, mild ivory. More doctors advise it than any other beauty soap. In 1 week, you'll have that lovelier look, that ivory look. This pretty pink ribbon and bow tells you it's personal size ivory. Your best beauty buy is PSI, personal size ivory. Buy 4 cakes and save.
The Guiding Light has been presented by Ivory Soap. 99 and 44 100% pure. It floats. And does, the soap that does everything in your washing machine.
This is the CBS Television Network.